Hello, my name is Roy Johnson from Acoustic RGJ. Today we're going to be looking at a song cover by Bob Dylan called Love Minus Zero No Limit. So this is my own arrangement, and what I thought I'd do is, rather than just showing you what to play, also explain some of the theory behind it so you can take some of the ideas away and make up your own versions of songs. The first thing you need to do is just check some of my comments. In there you'll find a link to the tab which is written out in full. Print that out because you'll find it really useful as we go through the song. And we'll also have a look at one or two exercises which will help you to put together your own arrangements. I recorded this song many years ago, and there's a version still on my YouTube channel somewhere if you want to take a look. But for now I'm just going to play through the introduction and the verse so you get an idea of what we're going to be looking at over the next few minutes. My love, she speaks like silence, without ideals or violence. She doesn't say she's faithful, yet she's true like ice, like fire. People carry roses, make promises by the hour. My love laughs like the flowers, and valentines can't buy her. In dime stores and bus stations. And then we carry on through two more verses until we get to the end of the song. Now the song itself is fairly simple in terms of its chord structures. It's basically made up of three chords: a D major, G major and an A7. So you could play the song quite simply like this. So using an arpeggio that's going P-I-M-A repeatedly. D, 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 G, G, D, G, G, D, G, G, A7. Etc, etc, and round again. So that was okay, but we really want to make the song sound a little bit more interesting. So let's start by looking at the introduction, which also acts as a link between the verses. Basically, it's just playing around with G, D and A7 chords. So let's have a look at it in a bit more detail. So basically we're starting off with a D chord and doing a descending bass line with a D, C sharp and a B. That's the D, that's the C sharp, and that's the B. And when we get to the B, effectively we've built a G major chord at that point. Now eventually we want to get to something that sounds like an A7 chord, which is the dominant chord, and that will resolve to the root chord D. We'll go into that a bit later on. So we have D, C sharp, a B, okay. And you'll also notice that I'm playing an open E string rather than an F sharp, and that gives us a kind of suspended chord sound, which just adds a little bit more interest than an ordinary sounding D. Playing bass notes over chords can sound really quite interesting. So any chord is typically made up of three notes: the root note, the third and the fifth. So in a D chord I've got a D, which is my open fourth string. I have an F sharp and an A. Now any of those notes can actually be used to play in the bass. So that's what's known as playing an inversion. I could play a D chord with a D in the bass, an F sharp in the bass, or I could play it with an A in the bass. But equally, you could play any scale note from a D major scale. So one of the things you could try playing is starting off by playing a D major scale, Okay, so I'm playing D, C sharp, B, A, G, F sharp, E. Obviously I can't go down to the D because I'm in standard tuning. But if we play those notes over a D chord or a partial D chord, you can hear we get some interesting harmonies. So have an experiment with that. You could also try it on a different chord. So you could try the same thing with a G chord. So here I'm playing a simple partial G chord just with my third finger playing that top G on the third fret of the first string. But I'm going to add scale notes. So here I'm playing a G, a B, an A, F sharp, E, C sharp, B, G, F sharp, E. So you can see you get some really interesting kind of harmonized effects. Okay, so we get to the point now where we want to start thinking about returning back to the verse. Now ideally we'd like to end up on an A7 sounding chord, because A7 is a dominant chord in the key of D. In fact, it resolves very strongly to a D major chord. So I knew the chord I wanted to get to, and then it's a question of playing around with different harmonies to try and find a way of finishing up on the A7. So to do this I used a series of harmonized sixths, and we're going to have a quick look at that now. Oh, and for those of you who aren't sure what a harmonized sixth is, or aren't sure how to count intervals, have a look at my video called Where Do Chords Come From? Again, it's on my channel, and that goes into harmony and intervals in a bit more depth. Okay, so we played the first part of the intro. With those descending bass notes, and then we go into these descending sixths. So let's just have a talk about what those descending sixths actually mean. If I play a C-shaped chord but swap my fingers around and put a bar across, I actually end up with a D major chord. And these two notes here, an F sharp and a D under my first finger, so I call this an inverted sixth. Normally when you count an interval you take it that the melody note is on the bass and the accompanying note is on the top, on the treble side. But here I've flipped things over, so my melody note is actually the higher note rather than the low note, but I'm still counting from the bass note itself. So if I count from the F sharp to the D, I can go F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, and that is a sixth interval, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's inverted because the melody note is on the top, in this case it's a D, rather than on the bass. So let's have a look at the other intervals going up the neck. So that's our D harmonized sixth with the D melody note under our first finger. That's our E minor interval with our E. That's our F sharp minor. This is our G major. This is our A major. And this is our B minor. So we start our descending intervals up at the 12th fret with our second finger on the 4th string and our third finger on the 2nd string. Bear in mind that that second string is naming our interval. So that's playing a B at the 12th fret. So we've got a B, then our second finger slides down 1 fret and we put our first finger down on the 10th fret, and that gives us an A. We slide that down 2 frets and that gives us our G. Then we slide our second finger down 2 frets now, so now it's at the 7th fret. Add our third finger back into the 7th fret on the 2nd string, and that's our F, and then we slide that down 2 frets, and that takes us to an E. Having completed the small run of sixths, I then need to find a way of returning back into the verse. For this, I'm just using part of a D major scale, starting on an A and then finishing on a D. So this is the little scale run that takes me into the start of the verse. So start off with an A, 3rd string, 2nd fret. Then I pull off to play an open G. Then I play an F sharp, which I pull off to an E under my 2nd finger on the 4th string, an open D, finally getting to a C sharp on the 5th string at the 4th fret before playing a D chord. And that's the start of the verse. As I said right at the beginning of this video, the song is based on D major, G major and A7 chords. So what I've done is thought of ways of trying to pretty up those chords and make the arrangement interesting. So bars 5 and 6 are the first bars of the verse, and we're playing over a D chord. Really it's a D sus2 chord because I'm playing the open 1st string, but I'm starting off that little arpeggio with a D in the bass. Then I play an F sharp, which is part of a D chord, and then I play a C sharp, reach across with my little finger, 4th fret, 5th string, to play a C sharp. Now C sharp isn't part of a D major chord, but it is part of the D major scale, which is why the harmony works quite well. So bar 8, again it's played over a D chord, but this time I finish it off with a little kind of trill. So I started with a D chord, then I hammer my pinky on to get a G, then I pull it off to go back to the F sharp, pull that off again very quickly to get an open E before finishing off that arpeggio. And then we carry on, then we have a G chord, bar 9, into a D chord, with a descending bass line, C sharp, into a D chord with a B in the bass, and then I hit an A7 chord before going up my harmonized sixths. Now that first chord is an A7 chord, but in terms of harmony we can think of it as being a C sharp, because that's our melody note, so we've got a harmonized sixth, the C sharp in it, then we go into a harmonized D chord, then into a harmonized E, or effectively E minor sounding chord. Right, we should be at bar 13 now, and bars 13 to 19 are repeats of bars 5 to 12. And the next bar, which is bar 20, is basically the first bar of the introduction, which we're now using as a bridge between the two verses. And bar 20 you'll already recognise because that's the first bar of the introduction. In this case we're actually using the introduction as a bridge between the different verses. After playing through the song 3 times we get to the end, which is bar 24. Now bar 24 replaces bar 23. If you remember, bar 23 is the descending scale which takes you back into the beginning of the song again. This time we go to a full D chord to finish off with an F sharp in the bass to give it a good rich final conclusive sound. Right at the end of the song, rather than playing the descending scale pattern, we go into bar 24 and play a descending bass line over a D chord, which forms a nice kind of sense of conclusion. So what I'm doing there, I'm playing a D chord, I've got my first finger on an A, 3rd string 2nd fret, my 3rd finger on the D, 2nd string 3rd fret. I'm playing that with an open D note on the 4th string, then reach across to play my C sharp, and then go up to play a B, first finger on the 5th string at the 2nd fret, then I've got an open A in the bass before finally playing a D chord with an F sharp in the bass, and the F sharp gives it a nice rich sound rather than playing a slightly thinner D from a D chord. And it forms, and it gives a nice sense of conclusion to the song. Okay, so that's it really. I hope you found this video useful and interesting, and it has inspired you to have a look at some song arrangements of your own. If you have enjoyed the video, please subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then I can let you know when I've uploaded similar videos to this. Please add any comments. All positive comments are welcome, and it really helps me to know that people are looking in and listening and enjoying the work that I do. Okay, see you soon. Bye for now.